This is Lightning God. Oh, all right, let's try that with a 4-man group. This is Lightning God. This is the absolute highest damage, non-snapshotted Lightning Storm build that you can possibly have. This insanely strong Lightning Storm build can kill Duriel in half a second, and it's a very highly requested human Lightning Storm. This means you're not going to be a werewolf. Now you can rock your Druid cosmetics in style and not worry about looking like a herpaderp wolf. This is how fast it kills an elite pack in a tier 100 Nightmare dungeon with 4 players. They just melt. I actually recorded a tier 100 solo, and I thought the enemies were dying so fast that you wouldn't be able to see. So I asked some friends to come along to make the enemies harder. And if you want to get around the dungeons faster with this build, you can add in Shred or Trample, and you'll still have plenty of damage to kill everything. Alright, let me explain to you how the build works. So first off, we've got all of our companion skills. This, combined with Shepherds and Stampede, is the biggest multiplicative damage bonus that you can possibly get for core skills. That's why you see it used in so many builds. It totals up to 180%. Now, as far as the actives for our companion skills, we want to use Ravens to increase our critical strike chance, especially against priority targets like bosses. And there is a place for Poison Creeper to AoE poison mobs, but it's very unlikely you'll ever use this. However, it automatically passively applies poison to enemies, so if you have a boss, it's going to be poisoned almost the entire time. That's going to give us a damage bonus from our Envenom passive. We could use the active to poison mobs and increase our damage, but even if you're carrying a full team in a tier 100, you're going to kill the mobs so quickly that it won't matter. Our Bulwark is going to be a good defensive skill. It's going to give us Unstoppable as well as a barrier. Now, because we're going to be spamming our Lightning Storm, that means we're going to get the cooldown on this reduced using Symbiotic and Nature's Fury. So you should be able to get this up all the time and keep that nice damage bonus from Tybalt's Will, as well as the additional spirit that you get from it. We're also using the Petrify ultimate in order to increase our multiplicative critical strike damage, and I usually end up using this against armored enemies to try and get them killed as quickly as possible. But you can also use it on bosses, and it allows our damage to go a lot higher. And of course, the main part of the build is Lightning Storm. The longer you hold down your Lightning Storm, the more AoE space you're going to cover. When you start in a dungeon, you're going to want to start by holding it down until you see multiple lightning strikes. And then once you see multiple, as long as this green bar at the bottom doesn't drop all the way down, you'll keep casting the same number of bolts. But you can see it drop down. So now I've got to recharge it. And now that I've got multiple, if I wait until the green bar is only halfway down and I click it again, you can see the green bar refreshes. Now, as long as that bar doesn't drop, I can continue spamming, and I'll have the same number of bolts the entire time. Now, as you can see, I ran out of spirit, but this isn't a problem because every time we use our Earthen Bulwark, we're refilling our spirit. Now we can continue spamming, and it'll help cool down our Earthen Bulwark, and we can just rinse and repeat. But if that wasn't good enough, our Construct Companion is going to be refilling our spirit as well. So let me come in here. I'm going to waste some spirit. And now, if we attack it once, we can see our Construct is filling our spirit. Between the two of those, we'll never go short on spirit. Now keep in mind I'm using the Ring of Starless Skies. So if I were to take the Ring of Starless Skies off, you can see my spirit management, and this should give you a good idea of what the spirit management will be like if you don't use the Ring of Starless Skies. Now keep in mind, this is on enemies that aren't dying. If you're killing enemies, you're going to be getting additional spirit from Ancestral Guidance. Also, if you don't use the Ring of Starless Skies, you could always run Umbral if you really wanted some extra spirit, but you probably don't need that. Another nice option if you're not running the Ring of Starless Skies is you could run a Trampled Earth Ring here, and then you could remove your wolves and put in Trample. Now, I don't recommend this for bossing, but this would be a great way to get through dungeons quicker and also help you with your spirit management. Now I'm going to give you an example of what it would look like if you were attacking a boss. So like I said, we're holding it down to channel. We've got a little bit of a channel going. So now we're going to start attacking the boss. We can use our Ravens, we can use our ultimate and our Bulwark, and we can spam like crazy. As you can see, we're doing mostly 5 mil plus and all the way up to 11, I think 12 mil, something like that in there. So yeah, it's quite a bit of damage. Of course, if you don't keep using your Bulwark, it's going to drop, but each time you hit your Bulwark, it's going to go back up. Same thing with Petrify. If you use the Petrify, it's going to increase your damage. And the large majority of bosses will be dead before your Petrify runs out anyways, so you don't have to worry about it. Alright, for my gear, I'm going with Godslayer Crown on the helmet. I'm going with Juggernauts for the chest piece. I'm going with Unsung Ascetics Wraps for the gloves. I'm going with Tybalt's Will for the pants. Symbiotic on the boots. Shepherds on the two-handed axe. Retaliation on the amulet. Starless Skies for one ring, and Stampede for the other ring. I've already mentioned some things that can go in place of Starless Skies, but there's plenty of options that could go here, like Natural Balance, Lightning Dancer, or even Mother's Embrace if you really wanted to. As you can see, I'm running Ruby Gems in all of the armor, running Emeralds in the weapon, and then for my accessories, I was able to max out with just 1 diamond, but don't be afraid to use an extra diamond or two if you need to hit your resists. I have a pretty terrible roll on my juggernauts, so I actually need the armor over here, but it's very likely you won't even need it, so don't worry about it too much. I also have an all stats on my chest piece, which I would prefer to be HP, but in my current situation, I wouldn't mind having a total armor roll. As you can see, for the rest of the stats, I went for damage reduction, and then for my boots, I went with spirit cost reduction, movement speed, willpower, and I wanted all stats, but I got dexterity. I also wouldn't really mind not having the spirit cost reduction here. I could have damage reduction while injured, and I also wouldn't mind having a different implicit. With Lightning Storm, I actually prefer having the movement speed implicit on the boots. On the weapon, we are going two-handed axe, and my preference here is all stats, willpower, damage to close, and damage to distant. But critical strike damage and lightning critical strike damage work here too. You can even use core damage if you needed to. For amulet stats, the main things I look for is envenom and movement speed, but spirit cost reduction, any type of damage reduction, willpower percentage, cooldown reduction, and any usable additive damage stat is going to be fine here. And finally, for my ring, I prefer having critical strike chance, damage to close, damage to distant, and maximum life. And yes, I only have 3.9% critical strike chance on this ring, and that's after getting this up to 20 mil. So rip me. On our Seneshal Construct, we're running Tempest with Evernight, Resource, and Breaking. If you don't have Evernight, you can either run Swift or Efficiency. For our other ability, we're running Flash of Adrenaline, and we're going Duration Support, Tactical Support, and Genesis. And if you don't have Genesis, you can run the one that gives you some Fortify. For our Spirit Boons, we're going with Wariness, Iron Feather, Avian Wrath, Calamity, and Overload. If you need more Spirit, you can go Energize. And if you want more damage, you can go with Scythe Talons instead of Iron Feather. And I was on the fence between Calm Before the Storm and Overload, but I ended up going with Overload because most of this build is focused on making sure we have good boss damage. And this is the one area where I decided I'll go with something that helps a little bit with AoE. We're basically always going to have our ult up when we get to a boss anyways, so I wasn't too worried about this. In our skill tree, we're going with Earth Spike, and we have to put 2 points in. We're only doing that so that we can get to the next area. We're not actually using this on the build. We're going to max out Lightning Storm, and we're getting Primal Lightning Storm. Primal Lightning Storm is good because it's going to cause enemies to be immobilized. And when we immobilize elite mobs, it activates our God Slayer and gives us that increased damage, and also pulls all the enemies into a tight ball. I also went ahead and put 1 point in Landslide and over to Primal Landslide. I figured this would be worth it because we're immobilizing enemies quite a bit. So we're going to be activating these Terra Motes. And that's just going to improve the damage of this when it actually gets cast. Again, this is not going on your bar. This is cast by Nature's Fury. I also went ahead and maxed out Predatory Instinct. Normally I wouldn't max this out, but I figured for bosses we're probably going to be standing right next to them anyway, so we may as well take the extra critical strike chance. But in general, you want to stay far away from enemies when you're using this build. We're running Earth and Bulwark, up to Preserving Earth and Bulwark. We're maxing out Ancestral Fortitude and Vigilance. Then we're moving down to the Companion Tree, and I went ahead and put 1 point into Wolves, going to Ferocious Wolfpack, just so we could have a little bit more Fortify in the build. I maxed out Nature's Reach, I put 1 point into Poison Creeper, and I put 1 point in Ravens, and the 2 passives below. Then in our Wrath Tree, we're maxing out Electric Shock and Bad Omen. We're also going to be grabbing Max and Venom, and then moving down to our Ultimate, where we're going to get Petrify, and the 2 points passed. We're going to max out Defiance, get 2 points in Circle of Life, and 3 points in Resonance. Finally, our Keystone passive is Nature's Fury. On our Paragon boards, in our first board, we're going to go with either Electrocution or Human. I didn't level up my Human glyph yet, so I went with Electrocution for now. Electrocution is going to be better for bosses, but Human's going to be better running dungeons. So overall, I typically run Human. Moving up from here, we're going to be attaching the Ancestral Guidance board, and here we're going to be putting the Earth and Sky glyph. We're also getting the Legendary node here, and then we're moving to the right, and we're attaching Thunderstruck. On the Thunderstruck board, we're going to be getting the Fulminate glyph, and we're also going to be getting the Thunderstruck Legendary node. Moving down from here, we're attaching the Constricting Tendrils board, and we're going to be getting the Territorial glyph here. Then we're going to move over to the right one more time, and we're going to be getting the Spirit glyph, and this is on the Heightened Malice board. Finally, moving all the way back across over to the left of the Ancestral Guidance board, we're going to be attaching the Lust for Carnage board, and here we're using the Guzzler glyph. Now, if you have everything put together correctly, you should be getting every bonus except for this one over here, and possibly one of the ones over here. But I've got some random stats on my gear, so I ended up getting both of these. The one I'd stress the least about is this one. It's very likely you won't hit this, and that's okay. I'm going to include a full dungeon run after my outro, just in case you wanted to see some full gameplay. And I'm also going to include some outtakes because this was an extremely difficult video for me to make. I don't know why, but I cannot say words today. I'm really excited for you guys to use this build because it hits like an absolute truck and you will not regret trying it. It's not nearly as fast as Shred, but the damage is insane. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace. And we're using the guzzler. 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 Oh. And here we're using the guzzler. And here we're using the guzzler. And on this board we're using the guzzler. And here we're using the guzzler. And here we're using the guzzle. And here we're using the guzzle. Oh my god.